This is the vector graphics project. So we can start with a new file. And for this we'll use 17 centimeters by height of 24 and 300 pixels per inch. There's no special reason for this. You can make it any size you like, but essentially we're going to make something that's got approximately A4 portrait size to it. Okay, now for my, you can probably see I've got my rulers switched on here. Okay, view and rulers. So to get the rulers then, you can use the command key and R. You can use it to toggle them in or out, or you can use view and select rulers. As you can see, just about, I think the 0 point is the top left there. You can move that around, but it's for our purposes, we're just going to accept the default position. You can also right-click into the ruler itself if you wanted to change it to, say, inches, for example, or pixels. So you can change to whatever measure that you want to have. Now that I'm using this sort of up here because of the recording system, it doesn't allow a complete window. Okay, so one of the things that I need to do is to put a ½ centimeter border around my poster, and one of the ways you can do that is to establish some guides. So if you just move the cursor into the ruler, click and drag, and you can see there's a little guide information there. It tells you how big the guide is. Now I want it 0.5 centimeters. Now it's a bit awkward, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit and get the move tool, and I can again move the guides around. So let's go and get 50, 0.5 hours. There we are, 0.5. As you can see, it's a bit awkward, and isn't there a better way of doing it? Yes, there is. And you can just go to View, New Guide, and we want a vertical guide that's 16.5 centimeters, and that will give us a vertical guide. Oops, put the wrong number in. So I'm just going to use Command Z or Control Z, and let's do that again. New guide, and we're 17 centimeters across, so 16.5 should get us. Yes, there we go. What I put in before. Okay, so we got 0.5 guide here, 0.5 guide here, and we also want them across the other way. So let's go new guide. This time we want them horizontal, and 0.5 for our top guide, and the guide is going to be, this is 22, oh, we made it 24, didn't we? So it's 23.5, should give us the other horizontal guide. So that's our 4 corners of our poster. Okay, we also want, there's some picture elements that are going to need some guides as well, and I'm just going to drag that into position, roughly there and there. These will form the horizontal, the line across the picture, as you'll see as we move along. Okay, so we've got all the guides we want. So now what we're going to do is lock the guides, because we don't want them being moved around accidentally. Okay, so put in the shapes for the sky, and to do that, what we'll do first of all is choose the gradient for the sky. So I've just clicked on the foreground tool, and we're going to have a kind of almost violet nighttime sky at the top there, and in our background colour we'll choose kind of early evening blue, so we've got a nice transition between the two. Alright, so we'll select shape. We've selected the rectangle tool. If it's not there, just hold down the button, hold down your mouse button and select the rectangle tool. Go to the top tool controls, get shape, and instead of fill we want gradient, and within the gradient we want the foreground to background selected, linear, and the rest of that is fine. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag that in there, and actually I want the gradient going in the opposite direction, so let's do that again. Command Z, switch foreground background, and then click and drag. And you'll notice also that when you click near points, they automatically kind of connect to it. And the reason for that, of course, is because the snap is switched on. And the snap is to guides and layers, document bounds, the edges. So if we switch that, if I switched off the snap, that would stop, of course. But it's very handy to snap to the guides, because that's just what we want to happen. Okay, the next thing we need to add, first of all, the thing we need to do is deselect this rectangle before we start making any more, or any changes that we make will just affect the rectangle that's selected. So do make sure that you sort of get out of that selection before we make new objects. Okay, what we want is a sort of slate grey for the floor, and we're going to use the foreground to transparent setting. Now, because it's actually a bit tricky to get gradients to, well, it's a bit tricky to control the degree of the gradient once it's been done. You may need to experiment a few times. Anyhow, with the rectangle selected, shape, fill is transparency, foreground to transparency. Click and drag, and just take the gradient up to about halfway, and that should do for the basic gradient. The next thing we want to do is to go and get the direct selection tool, because we're going to select this rectangle, and we're going to hold the shift key down and drag this up to the next marker, and I'll say turn the live shape into a regular path. I'll say yes, and this reveals a little bit more of our street here, which will make sense when we add some buildings in and so on. Okay, just to make sure, because I didn't think we saved it before, just save as, and make sure it's a PSD file. And I'll just call this edit to make sure I've got a copy of that. And in your vector graphics folder, yes we do. Okay, because I don't think we saved it before. Sometimes I'm very enthusiastic about getting into the project, and I sometimes forget to save. So, but it's very important to save, of course. Okay, so for the stars then, we need to select the polygon tool and shape, and we want 9 sides, and in here you want to select star, and indent is, well, 53% seems to be well, something that creates stars anyway. And we want to make sure that this rectangle is selected, because when you click and drag here, the default action is to cut out the shape. So let's do a few more here, and some little ones, and a larger one down here, something like that. Okay, so what we can see is that this has now got little holes in it, and if you also look onto the paths, it'll show you the little holes that you've just cut out. So what you're in fact looking at is the white background. There's another reason why this rectangle with grey stuff needed to be out below the 50% point. The next thing we need to work on is the crescent moon. So just hold on to the shape tool, select the ellipse tool, and make sure it's got path selected, and make sure that this path is not selected, because we're going to shift drag to build our first part of the crescent moon, then again shift drag to build the next part of our crescent moon. You can allow a little bit of overlap because we want to make sure it does that. You can get the direct selection, a path selection tool, to move this around a little bit until you're happy with it. And I'll leave it a little bit. Actually, I'm going to change it slightly just to sort of show you that you can. Free transform path, and make it slightly bigger. Double click to accept, and then move it again just a little bit, and that's fine. Now I'm going to double click on the work path and call it moon, and then we can go into layers, make a new layer, call that moon. One thing we do need to do is to take away the front path. Sorry, I forgot that. Alright, what we need to do with this is click on the front path, and go up here to the options, subtract front shape. Okay, so you can see what's happened in here. And if we leave this one selected and then go to the path, layer and moon, then if we try to just fill it, it will fill everything else because only that path is selected. So just Command Z or Control Z to undo that, and make sure that both of these are not selected, and then try it, and you should have only the moon, the crescent moon, filling the path. Okay, we're going to use the move tool just to move that up a little bit to fit in with our main title that we'll have there a bit later. Okay, so now we're going to put in our blurb about the show sort of thing, and so we're going to make a text box, basic musical. Alright, so to format all of this, we'll bring out the character box. We'll set this to auto leading, space between the lines, and we want that to be somewhat bigger. We're going to have some of these words, actually let's just make it a little bit smaller for now, and set this up slightly bigger, and we'll leave that, just hold it from here instead. Okay, obviously if you make it too big it's going to overrun, and in keeping with our sort of moon idea, we'll have this as a kind of yellow colour there, and let's try this. It's a different colour too. And we'll also make that bold, slightly bigger, and the time says like yellow. Okay, so we've got a bit of interesting colour there. We'll also need to have to change the size of this. I'm also going to use a deformer. So just make sure that your text is selected, and then it will give you the text options again. Click on the what do they call this? Create warp text tool. And we're going to keep this very simple because there's lots of different warps that you can use. I mean, go ahead and try all of them. What we're going to do is use inflate for now because it's a fairly simple thing to do. And we'll use the default settings there. Just click OK. And then let's just click off show transform controls because they can get in the way sometimes. Okay, it looks a bit out of whack. So I'm going to rebalance these two lines. Let's make that 24 points. Quite. It's okay. Okay, if we want, we can actually type values in here, of course. It's still a bit too compressed, isn't it? Let's change that to 36 then. Okay, the time says we should sort of differentiate that somehow, shouldn't we? Light blue and then bold. This is all fun stuff. Time says okay, so that'll get us there for now. Alright, what's the times going to say? Well, it's going to say something like sensational. And let's say it with our moon glow yellow. So put that there. And I want this in caps. Okay, and we're going to have an exclamation mark, but we're going to reuse it in a slightly different way. A little bit bigger, perhaps. There we go, that'll do. I need to leave a little bit of space here because I'm going to use an exclamation mark in a path sort of way. Yeah, with sensational we're going to use our warp text again, and let's use the flag, is it? There we go. And again we'll just use the defaults for now. Sensational. Okay. Right. Right, you can use text to build images as well. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to put in an exclamation mark. We're going to make it a bit bigger. Oops. Okay, like that. Right, so that exclamation mark is going to be our starting point for our street lamp. And the way that we're going to do that is use type, create work path, and so we now have a work path in here, and we can get it type. The path itself, I'm going to give it mark so we can keep it. We're going to switch to the direct selection tool, and I'm just going to select those top two points there and hold down the shift key and drag that up to here, because these are going to form the basis of our lamp. Although we can see now this is actually a bit too big. So before we get onto that, let's go and change that a little bit, change the sizes a bit. Let's change the whole thing. Select the text once you sort of using the arrow keys to get to that part there. So it's ready, and that should probably do it. Change the curve again between the buttons. Okay, good. Alright, so now we've got enough space for what we want to do over here. And right, so let's go back to our exclamation mark. We're going to actually fill it with a transition layer, a gradation layer, I should say. Okay. Gradation layer, and we're going to transit between bright yellow to kind of darker yellow, I guess you could call it. A bit of grey in there. And we're going to use the gradient tool, which is hiding underneath bucket tool, and let's foreground to background, and we want the radial tool. So if I click and drag, so what we need to do is to attach this to the path as a vector mask. So we're going to vector mask current path. And now we've put that transition gradation into our, well, it's going to be a lamppost, so it's going to make a lot more sense once we have the lamps in there. Alright, so I've just moved our lamppost over here a little bit because I want to put in a little hanging thing and the lamp itself. So we could use the pen tool to put in our little support, but something else you can do is, of course, improvise. So I'm just going to use the little wavy line sign there, and actually I'm going to need it bigger than that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's going to be my little support there, and we'll use the I'm going to use the shape elliptical shape tool, but I'm going to make it into a path, and so hold down the shift key and drag, and I'm going to use the path tool to put it into position there, and we need to make a new layer. I'm going to close this. I don't need to use that. Okay, because I want to see more of this and the paths. Work paths, so I'm going to make that into lamp. Go back to my layers. So we need to make a new layer to paint into. Call this lamp, and with our path, we can click on this, or some people click and drag this down into the fill button. Doesn't matter which way around you do it, really. Okay, so now we have our lamp, and we can also put a layer style on that to make it a bit more interesting. Let's give it an outer glow, and let's see. If we click on the Add a Glow title, it'll bring up the options for the Add a Glow. Spread. It's interesting, it's got a limit on pixel size. Okay, so I've got a fairly bright outer glow there, and that will do. I'm actually going to copy that across to our moon, because we're going to make something of that. So if I want to copy the layer effects, copy layer style, and copy the layer style, select the moon, right mouse click, right mouse click, and paste layer style. So now I've got that same style on the moon there, and I'm also going to turn this into our title. So I'm going to make sure I've got the text tool. Okay, so I'm going to use cats, exclamation mark, and let's see. Okay, well, choosing a font can take some time. It's always a good idea to get it right, of course. So. Okay, I think we'll just use simple times or something like that. There we go. As I say, we could mess with the font for a heck of a while. I'm not going to. Okay. And I'm going to make this one bigger. There we go. In fact, I think we'll move these around a little bit so we don't quite get collisions with that star and whatnot. So let's go and get the moon. Move that around a little bit more like that. Okay, you'd probably want to play around with the font there to get something that's a bit more to your liking. Alright, so I've changed the font of the cats to a font called Noteworthy, and I chose it because it kind of has a cat's morphology to it. Yeah, it's got the kind of, like it's made of tails or something like that. I mean, but play around. I've also moved the main title around a little bit, so we've got a bit more space down here, because I'm going to bring in a character or two that we can use for to give it some of our cat's character. So we're going to open a file from one of the vector projects. Which one is it? Okay, yeah, there we are. Okay, if you want to learn how to use the the pen tool to make custom paths, you want to check out Project 5 or what's it called? Photoshop Paths Pen Tool Direct Selection Tool Part 2 and Photoshop Basic Bezier Curves Part 1, and that'll teach you how to make these kinds of paths. It looks a bit difficult when you first start out, but it's like anything else. It's always difficult when you first start out. Alright, so what you want to do is make sure that you get the direct selection tool. Okay, now to get the path from this file into this file is a bit tricky. If you do an edit copy and edit paste, it will treat it like it's a vector mask, and whatever is there will be turned into a vector mask. I think it's a bug in Photoshop, because it shouldn't really do that. It should just transfer it to the paths. However, there is a workaround, and that is to make sure that you've... Okay, I'll just show you what I did with this. So you may be used to it being in this complete frame here. What you want to do is grab the title and drag it outside of the window. And once it's outside of the window, make sure that you're on the paths panel, and then make sure that the path is selected so that you can see it. Then you simply drag from here to here, and that will drag it simply as a path. Hooray. So I think there's a few problems with the way that paths are moved from one place to another. But anyhow, we've finally gotten our path, and I'm going to make a few layers, and I'm going to click on there so I make sure that the new layer is above everything else. And we'll call it cat1, and go back to our paths. I'm going to make this cat a black cat, so let's go and switch back to our default colors, which you can do with Command D or Control D if you're on a PC. And I'm just going to drag that to the fill, and so now we've got our black cat. And let's make another layer, call this cat2, and back to our paths, and I'll make sure that the path is selected. I'll move it across here a little bit, and let's make this guy a grey one. This grey cat. And I'm just going to click on the fill tool, and let's move him around again, and make this one white cat. I need a new layer for each cat, because that way you've got better control over the edit. And switch to white as a foreground. Go back to my paths, click on fill, and we've got our 3 cats. I'm going to put a 4th one and reverse it so it's looking up at the name. So 4. And let's see, I want this one to be ginger. Go sort of bright ginger. Okay, and back to our paths. Select the cat and fill. Did I fill in the same spot there? Okay, different layer, same spot. Alright, so with this one selected, we want to go and use Edit, Transform Path. Oh, hang on, we've still got the path selected. Make sure the path is unselected, or it'll take action on the path instead of the layer. So with the path deselected, oops, and this layer selected, you can Edit, Transform, and flip horizontal, so that will switch it around a bit. Okay, I'm going to use auto select on my move tool so that I can move any of these items. I want this tail sort of leading into that one, and this tail leading out of it if we can. So we've got this kind of nice shape going across. Now our grey cat needs to be moved behind the black cat, and the same with the white cat so that they're not all crushed together. Oops. There we go. This is a bit of depth in the picture. And just to sort of finish this off, I'm going to paste layer style on there. I'm going to change the color of the text to a lighter version of the There we go. Okay, and I think we'll call that a video. Okay, thanks for watching. If you've liked what you've seen, leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.